After the lecture and whatever you want to do, I'm not going to take over. After this, I want you to stay for this because this is some cool stuff. And I'm not going to try to go too crazy on you. But when we look at embryology, we first start with fertilization. So in the previous chapter, which we don't do, is reproduction, but I post the PowerPoints up so you can have those in your binder. I'd much rather talk about this and just go home. I think you probably do too today. The sperm has to move through the uterus in a fallopian tube before it can reach the ovum, the egg in the ovaries. So that's a long, long passageway. Sperm are really fast. If a sperm were the size of a whale, that cost him now, he would reach Japan from here in 15 minutes.
Wow.
That's how fast they swim. That was in Wikipedia, so I don't make it up. Maybe it is made up, but and I'm not sure how to test it, but you know, some people who speed and all that, they figured it out. Or what was, no, I can't do the other joke because Sonia didn't laugh at it, so I don't think it's going to go across well. Should I try?
Sure.
All right. You know, there was the sperm, and there's one sperm working out, like sperm Arnold, really strong and really good, and then it came to get moving, and it started swimming really fast, was of course the fastest one, and all of a sudden he realizes something, he turns around and goes, go back, it's a false alarm. He's just jerking off.
Oh.
You didn't get that, huh? All right, never mind. Well, 300 of those Arnold people will reach the ovum, and then they have to figure out who's going to get in. Right? Well, that's a challenge because you don't want 300 kids in that thing. That'd be a problem, right? That would not fly and would not work. So when we look at a sperm has a cap on. A sperm has, you can see it here, a sperm has a head and a sperm has a tail. And then some little things in between. And sperm needs what? Sperm needs a lot of energy. Sperm needs to swim fast. And sperm needs to get into there. And then it needs to carry its genetic material. And that's it, right? That's all we need from a sperm. Everything else is macho. So one of the things a sperm has on top, it has a hat. The hat has an enzyme stuff on it. And the enzymes are kind of like a key in this moment that will bite away and eat away on these things up here, these skins or these door things. They call them weird stuff. They call them, you know, corona radiata and zona pellucida, whatever. These are just names for the skin here to penetrate through. And once they get through there, once these enzymes go, let that one sperm get in there, like those enzymes are the key to the door that gets unlocked. At that moment, we have an action potential that, like a shock wave that goes to the whole ovum and triggers that shock wave that pushes all the other sperms away. Kicks them out. And this creates what we get there is a polyspermy block. I like that word, right? A polyspermy block. So we're shutting the door. So the first one gets in and then the door shut. And that's pretty neat. I don't know. And then if you need all the difficult words, you got them right there. Alright, next time we come around. I don't think they're going to go into the day's head too much. Right? Because I read this at home going like, this all sounds like Euro-trashinese. I like, you know Melissa McCarthy? The comedian lady? She does Mike and Molly, she does Identity Theft, she does The Heat with Sandra Bullock. Big comedian lady, and she just doesn't take any crap. And so in Mike and Molly, she talks to someone and says, "What's that? You're a trashinese? You're speaking?" And so from there on, I'm speaking now Euro-trashinese when I speak. Because I thought it was just too funny. So when the sperm gets in there, the head of the sperm swells up because he's, of course, the macho king. So he's got to get big on the head, and because he got in. And so what does that one do then? It helps the ovum. He is the man, but after all, helps the ovum finish up its second maturation, and we get out of the ovum and the sperm diploid zygotes. And the zygote is the little thing, and diploid means we have two sets of the 23 chromosomes, not just one, which was in the ovum and in the sperm. So that's the union right there. And from that point on, we start multiplying, and well, we do that after about 30 hours, so that goes pretty quick then. And then we have to travel down here. We haven't done the anatomy, but here's the end of the vagina, and then this is the uterus, this is the fallopian tube, and then this is the ovary. So now we're up here, and we are fertilized, and we have to slowly move down, that we can sit in here and get growing and become a person. And so this is what this all says. So it takes us about 4 to 5 days to travel through the fallopian tube. That's right here. We're looking like that. It's called a morula. I like that word. It reminds me something from a glacier or something. It's weird. Moraine, but that's a different word. But once it then is in the uterus, it changes its shape a little. It changes its outside chemistry. It sheds. That's known as the zona pellucida. It sheds the skin, and that skin that it sheds was helping it not to implant in the fallopian tube, causing a tubal implantation, which of course we don't want. It cannot grow up here. It's too narrow. Got it? Good. And then when we get down here, we embed in the endometrium, which is the innermost layer of the uterus, and we call that nidation as a word. I like that word. I'm not using it on the text. It's not on the text, but I like that word. Nidation is a nice word. At that stage, we have an inner cell mass and an outer cell mass. The inner cell mass is right here. We're going to call that the embryoblast. That will become the embryo. And the outer cell mass is called the trophoblast, and that will become the placenta. This previous slide here, which I skipped, this tells us just about the sex determination, XY chromosome on the 23rd chromosome. And if it's a boy, we have an X and a Y. And if it's a girl, we have an X and an X. And the second X or Y apparently comes from the sperm. And they say if you are an anxious male, you have more girls coming out. I don't know if that's true. I have 2 girls. So.
Oh, if the man is anxious.
And I'm really happy about that. Although, yeah, I would be interested. I didn't worry about it. I have a boy now. His name is Louis, and he's a dog.
What did you say the inner cell mass becomes again?
The inner cell mass becomes the baby, the embryo. So that's why they call it the embryoblast. Okay. The placenta, says here the placenta, the trophoblast, which is the outer cell mass, so you just use that term, will become form some villi and does some stuff and get that then blood vessels. So the first thing we get is the outer cell mass forms these little structures that grow out of it, because first it's around. Of course, this is later in the stage of later here, but then those become the blood vessels. They call that chorion if you look it up in the book on the anatomy stuff, and then that will then anchor into the mom's blood supply, basically. And we'll have a slide on that in a moment, how that goes. But what that combination does then, the mom's uterus feeding the placenta, feeding the baby the blood, that will of course help the embryo grow because it nourishes the embryo. An embryo cannot eat. There's no door. Let me have some too, please. So it's got to come through the mom. And also, we don't breathe. So we have to have a gas exchange coming through the mom. So the mom needs to breathe for us. And so that's what we get through the placenta. We also have placental hormones that get secreted. And those stabilize the pregnancy. That's actually, it's this chorionic one, right? That we figure out pregnancy hormone. And chorionic gonadotropin, we can figure out there's a shift with some of that. Some of that hormonal shift, we can figure out the pregnancy early on. That's what that is. When we look at the placenta itself, it's well, it's sort of the second part of the pregnancy, really. It's a big part, and it's very important if you don't know that yet. It's about 18 centimeter in diameter, and it weighs about 450 to 500 grams, so it's about a pound, more or less, a little bit less than a pound. And we have sort of villi, like structures, these finger structures, these chorions, that get created, as we talked right there in the top, that come from the trophoblast. They go into the maternal end, and in the maternal end we have like pools. They call them weird stuff, intravillous spaces, and you know they do a plus. I don't even know how to pronounce these words, but I don't read them all day long. But basically, we have these fingers, these blood vessels from the placenta reaching into these pools of blood that are maternal blood in these intravillous spaces. That blood gets exchanged a number of times, 3 to 4 times per minute. And that's how the blood from the mom gets picked up. All right? Actually, the blood from the mom doesn't really get picked up. It goes and transfuses through into the baby through that. Okay? So it's kind of interesting. Just to sort of basic understanding of that. And that's about all I can do, because I don't do that all day long. When we look at... No, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to go right down here. The umbilical cord is a gelatin around it, gelatin structure, and inside we have 2 umbilical arteries carrying blood away from the baby into the mom, deoxygenated blood going out, and then we have an umbilical vein which brings the blood back into the baby that's oxygenated. That's from the mom, the oxygenated blood. Okay? After the birth, we have to do an afterbirth, and that's when the placenta itself comes out of and is born. And that's very, very important, because we have to make sure it looks proper. If it has to detach properly from the uterus, because if it doesn't, then we have bleeding. That used to be, and I don't know if it still is, but it's not a good sign, because you don't want to bleed out, because that can be causing the mom to bleed out, and then that could be, of course, fatal in the old days. And so, very importantly, we want to look at the placenta, make sure it is complete, make sure it has ridges, and what is it called? We want to make sure it has these, they call them cotyledons, weird stuff. But it's these indentations that reach down. We want to make sure it has all those together and it's not ripped apart. There's no ripping. So let's go back to the embryo, because it's kind of, it's not that simple. It's a little complicated here. When we have the embryoblast itself, is the cell mass that we had on the inside, and on the outside was the trophoblast, that was the placenta, made the placenta. And now we're going back to this embryoblast. And the embryoblast forms a 2-layered disc. And it has an inner layer called an endoderm, and an outer layer called an ectoderm. Right in here. Okay? That's right in. So we're looking at this structure right now. And so this is basically what that is, the baby. So the endoderm and the ectoderm are right in here. This is a disc. Then we have these 2 structures around it. And one is, well, these are the yolk sac and the amniotic sac. The yolk sac will